The fall of X has ended the Krakoan era, and Marvel now begins a new age with the goddess we all love, Ororo Munroe Storm. Welcome to the Comicstorian Complete Story Series, where we take trade paperbacks and single issues and we break them down into digestible bites to help you understand, then we read them dramatically back to you. All alterations to the panels, text, and images are to prevent copyright problems, and all art is owned by its respective companies. With the fall of X over, the world is now on somewhat good terms with mutants, Orchis has been taken care of, and it's time for Ororo Munroe to find her new place in the world. This is Storm issue number 1. Storm awakens in her sanctuary. She steps into her closet, looking at the various outfits that she has worn throughout her life. She grew up on the streets of Cairo, picking pockets to stay alive. In the rural settlements of Kenya and Tanzania, she brought rain to fight the droughts and was seen as a goddess. She has been the queen of Wakanda, the regent of Araco. She has served on the X-Men and the Avengers, fighting enemies that have threatened Earth time and time again. Today is one of her hardest days. She finally picks out something regal and moves through her sanctuary, flying past the animals that she protects there. Finally, she arrives at the main gate. The large doors part before her, revealing a gathering of reporters. Cameras begin to flash as she takes her place at the podium that has been set up for her. Storm is seen as a hero, as are mutants around the world. She takes a deep breath and begins to speak. 7 days ago, there was a massive explosion that ripped through the nuclear power plant outside Oklahoma City. The shockwave destroyed the massive stacks and tore apart a nearby neighborhood. It didn't take long for Storm and Frenzy to arrive on the scene, a tempest raging above them to calm the fires. "This is horrible, Storm. It's a miracle anyone survived," Frenzy whispers as she looks down on the destruction below. Storm nods as they land. "It is truly heartbreaking, Frenzy, but that is why we are here." The two look around the quiet streets, questioning why there are no survivors in the open. Suddenly, Frenzy whirls, pointing as a secondary shockwave erupts from the power plant. Storm whirls to meet the wave of destruction. Lightning crackles around her as she calls forth the storm, charging the atoms in the air and nullifying the shockwave before it can do more damage. The two mutants begin to work. Moving through the destruction, Storm slid some debris aside, finding a family cowering and trapped. "Shield the young one with your bodies," she whispers to the parents of a young girl. The humans do as they are told, and Storm sends a gust of wind that clears them a path out of their shattered home. She helps them to their feet with a reassuring smile. Nearby, Frenzy moves another crumbling wall to find a father and his son. She holds out her hand to them. "Can you walk, or do you need help getting out?" she asks. But the father cowers away in fear. "Please, don't hurt us," he says. Frenzy looks down at the Orchis shirt that the man is wearing, and her eyes narrow, anger overtaking her features. But Storm pushes past her. "Snap out of it, Frenzy. We help everyone," Storm tells her. And so, the work continues, with the mutants helping pull the survivors from the wreckage of their shattered lives. Several more shockwaves erupt from the power plant, but Storm stops them every time. She whirls as another erupts and calls forth the tempest once again. But this time, a sharp tree limb slices through the Storm and stabs her in the shoulder. Blood begins to seep into her dress, and with a hiss of anger and pain, she pulls the debris free. "We need to stop those shockwaves," Storm calls to Frenzy, ignoring her wound. She floats into the air, and before Frenzy can stop her, she flies towards the power plant in a bolt of lightning. The air crackles around her as she picks up speed, her dress fluttering behind her. She flies over river life that has died from radiation exposure, innocent woodland creatures that burst from the extreme heat. Storm can feel the effects of radiation the closer she gets to the destroyed plant. She pauses for a moment, lifting a crumpled lead door to help shield her as she pushes deeper and deeper. Finally, she arrives at the center of the plant, and she doesn't find a doomed reactor. She finds a scene all too familiar to mutants. She finds a mutant child, their powers newly activated by puberty, floating over a room of dead people. The child turns their glowing gaze upon Aurora. "I'm sorry. I can't stop myself," he whispers, tears falling down his face. "The more I try, the worse it gets. Please, kill me," he says. Energy begins to pour off him again, but Storm pushes through. Using her crumpled door as a shield, she finally grabs a hold of the child, and seemingly by pure force of will, or her maternal calming nature, the boy's powers finally begin to calm. "Enough lives have been lost today, child," she whispers. 3 days later, the entire country is talking. It was discovered that the scientists working at the plant had begun to use alien technology to try and create renewable energy. Not knowing the truth, people began to blame the scientists, questioning why they would use alien technology when aliens are always trying to invade Earth. Due to Storm's actions, people now look to mutants as heroes, with mutant acceptance suddenly skyrocketing. But Storm knows the truth. She brings in Tony Stark, asking him to run the numbers, hoping to discover that the alien tech started the meltdown before the child activated. Tony looks over the alien kaiju that is acting as the reactor. "These guys' work was so bleeding edge. I'm embarrassed I didn't think of it first," he sighs. But he looks to Aurora, telling her that he's run the numbers several times. "I'm sorry. I know the last thing you want to hear was that the birth of the mutant's powers killed all those people," he says as he removes his helmet. In the wake of this tragedy, mutants are finally looked on as heroes. They love you, but the price has been the reputation of these engineers, Tony says. Storm nods and rubs at her head. Tony puts a hand on her shoulder. "So, Aurora, you have to make the call. Stay silent and let mutants have this win, or tell the truth and defend the honor of the deceased," he says. Atlanta, now. Outside Storm's sanctuary. She takes a deep breath, but the air catches in her lungs and she coughs into her hand. As she catches her breath, she looks down in surprise to see that she's coughed blood into her hand. But she shakes her head and pushes past it. Finally, she looks up at the gathering of reporters and begins. "Good morning. I am Storm, mistress of the elements," she begins. Her speech is broadcast around the world and watched by her fellow mutants and heroes. Storm tells the truth, explaining that the engineers who were working with alien tech to create renewable energy weren't behind it, that it was the activation of a mutant that caused the destruction and death. Storm speaks heartfelt words, but she can see that she's already lost the crowd. Within moments of learning the truth, the world's views of mutants have once again shifted and twisted into hate. By the end of her speech, the crowd has already left, with only a few remaining. However, Storm is unaware that someone else is watching. From beyond our solar system, or even our universe, someone watches with the unquestionable intent of the cosmos. The being known as Eternity holds out its hands, having heard Storm's words. "I am Eternity. I have found you worthy, Aurora Monroe. To me, my eternal Storm," Eternity whispers. And Storm appears in his hand in a dazzling flash of light. And so the goddess has become an eternal storm. But what does this mean for Storm and the X-Men? You'll have to subscribe to the channel to find out next time. And be sure to let us know down below what you thought of this story, and what you think about Storm being the new face of mutants and X-Men at Marvel Comics. And of course, like the video if you enjoyed it. We'll see you next time. Rest in peace, Penny.